What's up, guys? How you doing? I am in a new location because we still don't have power. Given the fact that I'm in a new location, I don't know how stable the Wi-Fi is here. Like, let me know if I look okay and I sound okay to you guys. I can make some adjustments before we dig into this big title topic today. But man, losing power it sucks. I know there's more important things in the world and I shouldn't complain too much, but it's incredibly frustrating. That storm, the remnants of the hurricane and tropical storm blew through my neighborhood on Tuesday. And on Tuesday, I somehow managed to stumble through 2 junkets with a whole bunch of interviews that I had to do, basically only using the minimal amounts of cell service that I had. And then the power was just completely out. I am lucky enough that my family has a generator, but the generator has not been working all too well. And I want to say like 10 o'clock last night, that was the end of the generator. So all of, the little bits of light and AC we had in the house are gone. But thankfully, my dad's office does have power and internet. So I've been camping out here as much as possible. Fingers crossed we get power back soon, but I don't know what's going on. The estimates just keep getting pushed back. And I think at this point it's saying something like Monday morning. But man, this whole thing is crazy. Because I was thinking back to when we had Hurricane Sandy in New York, and that was a huge, devastating storm that they were talking about for a long, long time before it happened. And when that blew through, it really did knock out power for a while. I was living in Manhattan at the time, and I was lucky to be above the line where all the outages happened. But my family on Long Island was out of power for I think 2 weeks. But that was a big storm that was here for a very long time. The fact that this one only lasted, I want to say 2-3 hours with barely any rain, but a lot of wind, it just seems a little crazy to me that they can't get all that stuff fixed quickly enough. But I don't know. What do I know about restoring power? So I'm just glad that everybody is safe and healthy. And I will be as patient as I possibly can, waiting for proper power to be restored here. And I got this place in the meantime. Yeah, Ricks, this is probably a big part of the problem. Power lines, if it gets hit, it will take a while to fix. I think that's what we're going through right now. So that's what's going on. Yes, Christy. Oh, wow. Glad you have his office, as am I, because when the power had first gone out here, it seemed like our house was going to get it restored sooner than his office. And then all of a sudden the office came back on. So at least I have this, which is great. What you got, MK Songbird? Think power restoration is slower because they aren't able to bring as many out-of-state workers due to restrictions or other COVID restrictions in place. I'm not quite sure about that, but I think that could be a possibility. That is definitely a take on it that I haven't really thought of, but it does make sense. So that's my status right now. But I'm glad I got to set up the stream today because I really wanted to take my mind off of it for a little bit and to hang out with you guys. I have been a little out of the loop as far as movie news goes because of my limited internet access, but I have been doing my very best since last night to catch up on all of the breaking news regarding the Paramount Consent Decrees, which is what I want to talk about mostly today, but I only have that one title topic. So if there are other topics you guys want me to hit, drop it in the chat, and I'm going to get to as much of it as possible. With the Paramount Consent Decrees, I do want to put out there that I am no expert on this matter. I have been learning for the past couple of months since the possibility of this happened has been out in the news. So, my take on it and my information on it is from extensive reading and trying to teach myself as much as possible about them. But if I bring up something that sounds inaccurate, or if you have a different take on the matter, hit the chat and let me know. I got our first question right here from Travis Earl. What are consent decrees? So the Paramount Consent Decrees were basically an effort to stop monopolistic practices by movie studios. It was something that was put into effect in the late 1940s. I believe it was 1948. And why it was needed was way back then, studios were vertically integrated with theater chains, which basically means that studios could own the theaters where their product was sold. And, you know, there's monopolistic practices right there. And that had to be stopped. And that's what these decrees did. They basically established rules. They established rules for the licensing relationships between movie studios and theater owners. And they stopped practices like block booking was a big one, which is a situation where theaters were forced to buy bundles of films in just one license. So what would happen is, you know, a movie studio would have a really good potential moneymaker, but then they would force you to show this crappy movie that they knew wasn't very good and probably wouldn't make a lot of money. So that was happening. There's also blind bidding where you had to show movies sight unseen and you didn't know what you were going to get in this bundle here. And then there's also circuit dealing, which is, it's a situation where licensing films, I'm trying to describe all of this as accurately as I possibly can, licensing films to movie theaters under, I think it's under a common ownership was the right term, as opposed to licensing these films on a theater by theater basis. So you have the decrees getting put into effect and all of those things couldn't happen anymore. And it resulted in a distribution industry where there were actually real negotiations happening between movie studios and theater chains where the movie studios didn't have all the power. So now let's get into why they wanted to lift these decrees here. So the take on it from the government is that it's dated. These policies are dated and they aren't useful anymore. And I 99% disagree with that. So here's one statement that I want to read you from the U.S. District Court's official statement. They're saying the court finds that it's unlikely that the remaining defendants would collude to once again limit their film distribution to a select group of theaters in the absence of the decrees, and finds, therefore, the termination is in the public interest. No, it's not. I mean, you're basically suggesting here that big money-making companies are going to behave appropriately even without these rules in place, and that seems highly unlikely to me. Then we also have this other quote here that I want to read from Judge Torres, who noted, as internet movie streaming services proliferate, film distributors have become less reliant on theatrical distribution. Yes, to an extent, but no, that feels like a very, very broad and unfair generalization there. We've been talking about this for a very, very long time, and we talked about it a lot on Movie Talk. The landscape is changing with streaming services on the rise and more of them coming our way every single day. Things are changing. They're bound to change. We knew it was going to happen. But that change, I think, had it was scary, no doubt, but I think it had a more promising future with these rules in place where, yes, we could see different types of distribution arrangements. We could see the window between a theatrical release and at-home viewing opportunities close, but there would still be rules in place that would give things like independent movie theaters more of a chance to stay afloat. By taking these restrictions away, that limits their chances of survival. And it's just so incredibly, I don't know if short-sighted is the right term. It's also because we're in such a weird situation. It's like, this is an issue that I thought was going to come up no matter what. given the way things are changing in the industry and how we're consuming content right now. But to get all of this like right smack in your face in the middle of COVID, and I know we knew that this was coming before, but to really get this news and know that, you know, it feels very inevitable now. It's just absolutely crazy. Before I keep babbling on here, I'm going to check the chat to see if anybody has any like questions or takes. All right. What do we got here? Luke, what you got? If the existing chains go bankrupt due to COVID, Disney could buy their infrastructure. That's definitely like a big thing here, is movie studios snatching up theater chains, especially when theater chains are suffering right now. This is a good point that Simon brings up. These decrees didn't apply to a company like Disney because I think it was, what was it, Disney, Lionsgate? I forget what other studio I'm missing, because the decrees were established before and they pertained only to Paramount, Warner Brothers, and I'm missing a studio here. I can't remember. But really, just from a broad perspective, having these rules wiped out completely, it kind of makes the situation more so of a free-for-all, even for a company like Disney that wasn't under this to begin with. All right. The reasoning is so dumb. No, I kind of agree. What else do we got here? All right, let's get MK Songbird. With a platform for digital distribution, Disney Plus, Disney is close to having vertical integration on distribution already. Mulan releasing on exclusive platform where Disney retains revenue. Yes, I mean, this is where this came up last night on Merry Hour was, and I think the news broke last night while we were recording and Matt brought it up, but we had been talking about their decision with releasing, we got MGM, RKO, yes. But last night when we were talking about Mulan hitting Disney Plus at a cost on Merry Hour, we brought up this particular topic. And I do think Disney is inching closer and closer to vertical integration at this point. Another thing that is very interesting about the whole scenario that was brought up in a lot of the articles I was checking out is Disney is also, unfortunately, very well known for basically putting a lot of restrictions on their big movies with theaters. And the example that I think makes it extremely clear is that Disney was demanding at least 4 weeks in theaters for Star Wars: The Last Jedi. And if you didn't adhere to that, they would charge you a certain percentage fee. But part of the problem with the decrees going away and that type of policy is that it would essentially just screw over small theaters and independent theaters. So when you have rules like that and you're a big chain like AMC, you can accommodate that, and you can expect in a big city, let's say, for 4 weeks for people to continually come in and see The Last Jedi. But if you live in a super small town and you only have a population that amounts to a very small amount of people, and all those people go through their one local cinema to see Last Jedi in the first week or two, what is that poor theater supposed to do for the next couple of weeks? It just makes absolutely no sense. And if Disney was allowed to do things like that before, like, imagine without any kind of regulation like this, what they could do now. It's just not a good situation. So before I dig into even more negativity with this, because I mean, you know, I like to be positive, but that's how I feel about this. The one pro that I've heard many discuss is the fact that, you know, Netflix, Amazon can buy theaters. And if you wanted to see a Netflix movie, like The Platform, for example, on the big screen, which is something that I would love to do, something like that could be in our future, which is, I mean, that's kind of cool, but is that worth all the risk that comes with all of this? And I don't think so, because you're going to have block booking coming back apparently after a 2-year sunset period. You got circuit dealing, and you know, all of this will likely amount to prices going up. We think prices for movies are high right now. Like you're going to be paying even more when all of this stuff starts to affect the industry. And then on top of that, we're probably going to have a lot less variety in theaters. So with all those practices coming back, you're going to have studio demands that, I mean, when I think about companies like A24 and Neon, I'm afraid that these policies won't give them access to screens like they had before. That is just hugely alarming to me. And also, another thing to keep in mind, right now, studios need to screen all of their films before they negotiate the release strategy. Without the decrees, that's not going to happen. And do you know what that's going to mean? It's going to mean a dip in quality. It doesn't mean we're not ever going to get good movies, but it's going to go back to the block booking thing, where the bigger studios can make a buck off of, you know, a movie that they just churned out with less resources by like shoving it into a package with something like a Star Wars. Oh God, I'm like out of breath from all of this, because change is hard, but change doesn't have to be bad, and change doesn't have to sacrifice the little guys if rules are in place to maintain proper business practices and to keep the industry away from, you know, the monopoly that studios used to be before. I do understand why things like this are happening right now, but it still makes no sense as far as how it will serve the industry overall. And I know we've been talking about, you know, movie theaters turning into a place where you can only see the biggest of the big. I still did have some hope for some more unique tactics and strategies, preserving independent films hitting the big screen and maybe paving the way to some really exciting creative opportunities for distribution that I have not even thought of myself. But without these types of regulations, I feel like they are putting, you know, the ball more firmly in the court of the big studios. And I think it is going to be a very dangerous precedent to set that will lead to a major upheaval in the industry. But at this point, like, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to sit back and I'm going to watch it all play out. And I'm going to hope that studios behave appropriately. I mean, there was one other thing where I think the U.S. District Court's statement made the assumption that, it was that one of those first things I read. The court finds that it's unlikely that the remaining defendants would collude to once again limit their film distribution to a select group of theaters in the absence of the decrees. I mean, you're putting a lot of faith into that end of the industry, and I don't have that same faith. All right, checking in on the chat here. Skookum Trooper. This is bad for repertory cinema, but it may now be necessary to save cinema overall. I mean, I don't think it's hard. It's actually really hard, especially right now with the pandemic and seeing theater change just absolutely floundering. I don't want those venues to shut down overall, but I think there is probably a more fair approach to figuring out ways to swoop in and keep them alive. I don't necessarily think, you know, let's say, for example, Universal buying AMC is the way to go about it. But theaters are in trouble right now, and my heart breaks for them. My heart breaks for all the employees who lost work, and I hope we can come out the other side of this in a reasonable way. Going down the line here, I think more indies will go streaming. Xeno Hour, I agree with you. On the one hand, I've seen some exciting things with some smaller independent films, especially in the horror genre, because that is what I pay attention to quite a bit, where I've seen movies and concepts catch on more so than I think they would have had they been shown on the big screen. I think people were more likely to see them while we're all staying safe at home and having access to these movies at the click of the button. So there is that kind of positivity there, but Matt last night brought up something where there are some independent filmmakers that are becoming concerned that by selling their movies to streaming services, they're less likely to build the name recognition that they might have showing a really great movie that they made on the big screen. And, you know, I'm a little iffy on the matter. I think with the change of the distribution landscape, we're going to see a change in notoriety like that too. I mean, maybe there was a period where you're more inclined to remember a director's name if you saw their movie on the big screen versus if you saw it on the streaming services. But I don't know. I understand that concern as well. And, you know, I don't want to make it seem like, you know, woe is me from the creator perspective, but it's freaking hard making a movie, especially when you're the little guy in the situation and you're pouring, I mean, all of your time, maybe your resources, swiping your credit card, you're pouring everything you have to making this piece of art that you are deeply passionate about. And if your original intentions were to have that thing shown on the big screen, I can understand how it's, you know, probably emotionally devastating to not get that opportunity. But I hope some creators right now that are finding their movies released on streaming services are finding some solace in the fact that maybe their movie is being seen by more people. I mean, that's just me trying to grasp so hard onto a silver lining right now. What else do we got here? Well, yeah, I mean, well, but can you blame them? So many theater chains, Justin, are making their money, the bulk of their money off of concessions. So $7 for a hot dog, yeah, I know it's ridiculous, but they got to do what they got to do to stay afloat. Terry's here. Miss going to the movies. Was so ready for Black Widow earlier this year. Well, last night on the Merry Hour, my big prediction was that I think that Mulan is going to pave the way to both movies, you know, big contenders in 2020 for Disney, like Soul and maybe Black Widow, having the same release strategy applied if Mulan works out. I mean, maybe they're going to use Mulan as like a testing ground, even though I think on that call where all this news broke, they were saying that this is a one-off thing, but then there's quotes circulating out there that say they've put so much work into this release strategy that I think this is more of a testing period where they're gonna, you know, execute this plan for Mulan. And if it works, we're gonna see it happen to more movies. And as sad as it is that certain movies are not gonna be seen on the big screen, I kind of can't blame them because, you know, I know companies like Disney have a lot of money and, you know, like they're kind of like getting like a big bad studio reputation for how much they control right now, but they still are a business. And if they're going to make money, they need to deliver content and they can't just sit on all their content and wait for theaters to reopen, especially when I don't think we have a really clear sense of when that's going to happen and when that's going to happen in a reasonable fashion. So as much as I wanted to see Mulan in particular on the big screen worldwide, I wanted that movie to get that audience. I do understand their need to pivot to something like this for releasing these big movies. Neil is bringing up that Mulan had its premiere before, so it simply wouldn't make financial sense to release it to theaters. I don't know if I link that to the fact that the movie had already had its big Hollywood premiere. I think there's just no sense. I mean, and this goes back to the New Mutants thing. I can't believe they're still pushing for a theatrical release, you know, despite what it says in the fine print and contracts. But I think it's just not a smart move to release, or at least domestically. I'm not fully aware of what markets are opening up and actually making money at the box office right now. But in the United States, I think it is just the worst decision to release a movie in theaters right now or in the near future, because yes, you may have a bunch of people who run out and are super excited to see a movie again, but you are definitely not going to have access to the same sized audience you might have before. So take out all the people who are afraid to go to the movie theaters. Then also, what are the movie theaters' policies going to be? Are they going to limit it to 50% capacity? You lose even more people that way. Then you also have to worry, if we're just limiting it to a business perspective, think about all the people who go to a movie theater and get sick because of it. I forget the terminology I just heard the other day, but one of the big concerns with movie theaters and COVID is having someone confined to a room with other people. It's not even just about being 6 feet apart and wearing a mask. It's also about like just sitting in that space and having that air circulate for such a long period of time. So let's assume that some people who want to go support a Disney film, for example, they wind up getting sick and then they can't see the next couple of releases. So the whole thing just doesn't make sense to me at all from a business perspective. But like most importantly, as much as I understand that studios need to put out content to make money, I also think it is in the public interest. And I guess I think it's just like it's plain old selfish to try to entice somebody to put themselves in a risky position to see your content. So for the time being, I am going to support these PVOD strategies as much as I possibly can and keep a close eye on how the whole thing pans out. What do we got here? Oh my God, we got a lot of stuff. Hello to the next big rap star, 92. Hope that WB HBO Max launches in both the UK and the US at the same time because we never got the DC app over here. Super. I get it. The territory stuff is very, very frustrating. HBO Max is up and running here. So if you don't have it in the UK, it's not happening at the same time. I will say though, I'm very much very into what HBO is doing right now. I think they have a great library over there. I know things are still changing because of pre-existing deals and everything, but a lot of the new content that HBO is releasing right now has been some of my favorite stuff that I've watched since the pandemic began. You guys probably know I was a big fan of Perri Mason season 1. The season finale happens on Sunday, and you don't want to miss it. I posted my Lovecraft Country review of the first 5 episodes, and I'm very, very into that. But I think HBO is dishing out some good stuff. Oh, and American Pickle. I can't say I loved American Pickle, but I did. I liked it way more than I expected, given the assumptions I had made about that concept. I thought they really brought way more heart to it and meaning to it than I was expecting initially. So they got some good stuff. They got some good stuff coming. All right. MK Songbird is looking forward to the third day on HBO with Jude Law and Naomi Harris starting September 4th. I am a huge Naomi Harris fan, so anything she touches, I will be excited about. Have you seen any of I May Destroy You on HBO? Michaela Cole is phenomenal. MK Songbird, I haven't, but it actually caught my mom's eye. So maybe your comment and her interest is a reason for us to jump into it together. Because like one of my favorite as much as I miss my apartment in LA and my life out there, one of my favorite things while I have been home is to be able to share the content that I love so much with my family. Because we kind of can't do that without power right now, but when it's restored, maybe we'll jump into it. How about Travis Earl? American Pickle looks good. Seth Rogen is great. Vancouver represent. I will emphasize that Seth Rogen is really good in that movie, and it's not just. I briefly said this in my review. It's not just him, like doing a silly shtick and pulling that off well. Like, I think he really makes both of them feel like fully realized characters with important perspectives, and I think that's why the reason that the multi-generational concept works so well, it actually means something to you after you watch it. Justin, no, I did not move back permanently. The way that I'm thinking about all of this changes as we get new news. It's like at the beginning in March, April, when I first came back here and everything was, fairly new, I kept assuming that I was going to wind up back in LA and things were going to calm down by the summer. Clearly that has not happened. And given what I know now about the state of the country in regards to the pandemic and also with all the new information we've received about side effects and long-term effects, I don't see a reason for me to go back to LA and risk it until there's either a vaccine that I can take, or, to be completely honest, if work demands it. And I would just, I just hope that work would only demand it if it was safe to do that. So that's kind of where my mind is at right now. So I might be in New York for a little while longer. So I will be broadcasting from here. I'm going to wind this down now. I'm so happy that I was able to do this stream at all. Oh, very, very quickly from Lee, will you cover DC fandom? So I need to look into the details a little more, but I did, right before I lost power, I had started like the preliminary steps to get into covering that. And I really do want to do that. I need some serious catch-up time. Again, this is like little stuff, but because I haven't had constant access to power and internet, my inbox is just, it's a mess. Usually I'm so like neat and organized about my inbox, but like I've missed emails and my text messages are out of control. And I feel like I haven't been as active on the Slack channel. And guys, I'm just talking to you constantly. It's been a challenge. It's been a challenge, but I'm getting through. Someone dropped that word, schmodown. Rix, why did you do it to me? Oh, guys, I'm so stressed about it. I'm so stressed about it. I can't even begin to tell you. Y'all know how competitive I am. Whenever I do something, I like to do it well, and I like to be the best that I possibly can. And as a competitive person who grew up playing a lot of sports, guess what? I am competitive and I like to win. And the truth of the matter is, I know I'm not the strongest competitor in the league. I have a lot to learn. I have a lot to study. And I have gaps. I'm a film lover and I watch stuff nonstop, but I have some pretty major gaps in my knowledge. And the key is just going to be figuring out ways to like play the game strategically where I can work through those gaps in my knowledge rather than be completely crippled by them. And I'm not one to ever like give up. I won't, let's say, have a bad first round and say, oh, well, screw it, I'm not going to try anymore. I will always try, but I do tend to get very down on myself when I do things wrong and I say things wrong and I don't get answers correct. So I gotta keep it together and keep thinking strategy. Strategy, have fun. Strategy, have fun. That is my plan. All right, guys, I am out of here. Who knows? Maybe I'll call home right now. We'll have power back. Keep my fingers crossed. Thank you guys for helping me take my mind off everything and for hanging out with me on this Saturday. I will hopefully see you during the week with more reviews and anything else I can